Hello and welcome. My name is Shasta Roberts. I am the author of Stronger Than Your Excuses, and welcome back today as you continue along with me as I read my book to you, Stronger Than Your Excuses. Today we are on chapter excuse number 2. It is True Love Doesn't Exist. Welcome. Let's begin. I was never a reader when I was growing up. I hated reading assignments, even small ones. I wasn't into school in my adolescence. I wanted to dance and play sports, be with my friends, and just live life. My dad was a big reader when I was growing up, though. He was the only one in the house that would stay up late to read a book. He loved to sit on the couch and read whenever there was quiet time. I remember him running to the store at midnight to pick up the newest Harry Potter book and staying up all night to read it. I never understood this. How can a book be more interesting than life? If I want entertainment, I will just turn on the TV, play a game, or play with toys. I grew up in an age where TVs had been in homes for a long while, but were still only a small selection of cable channels. By the time I had started school, more and more channels were being added all the time. I'm young, but I do remember a day when there were less than 30 channels. Cable TV didn't start running 24 hours a day until I was 1 year old. New entertainment was constantly showing up on the TV. Why would you want to read? You want love? You want horror? You want action? It is all found on TV. Anything you want is there now, and you can sit and mindlessly enjoy. When I was in college, living in Portland, I received my first jury summons. In Portland, back then, if you received a jury summons, you had to show up at the courthouse the day you were allotted. If you were picked that day to be a juror, you would then come back the days required and perform your civic duty. If the day ended and you were never chosen, your jury summons was over. No multiple days of showing up or calling in the morning to see if you had to go back in. You only had one day to see if you made the cut or not. Back in 2007, when I received my jury summons, Apple was the only phone with apps or internet. If you didn't have an Apple phone, you had nothing but phone calls or text messages. We had to find internet entertainment outside of cell phones back then. You couldn't just sit on the phone all day surfing the web, watching YouTube videos, or checking in on your social media platforms. All I could do was open my flip phone and play Snake. If I had to sit in a chair all day in a courthouse, I had to figure out what I could do to occupy my time and mind. Reading seemed to be the only answer. I hated reading and never understood the thrill, but there was no other choice. So I stopped at a nearby bookstore in the morning before heading off to the courthouse. If I was going to read, I figured I would at least pick a book I knew and loved. My favorite Jane Austen movie is Keira Knightley's Pride and Prejudice. I thought that if I loved the movie, maybe I could stand to read the book. Thankfully, the bookstore had a copy, and it even had Keira Knightley on the cover. After arriving at the courthouse, I entered through the juror's entrance and proceeded through the metal detectors. I checked in, since you don't want to be marked absent to jury duty, then was directed to the waiting room. It was a courthouse, so I didn't expect much for seating. I found the most comfortable seat, which wasn't that comfortable, but it wasn't the floor either. Most of the people were standing looking around the room awkwardly, not really sure what to do. It was obvious we would be here for a while. Hopefully you found a good place to sit, because we were going to be in for a long haul of a day in this room just waiting. like a herd of cattle waiting for the slaughterhouse. When I became bored of waiting, I decided to occupy my mind with what I brought, my book. I had never read a Jane Austen book before, but I knew the story from the movie. However, this story was not like the movie. Details had been taken out and little nuances had been overlooked. I loved Pride and Prejudice, the movie, but the book was different. I was falling into a deeper love with the characters in the book than when I watched the movie. Maybe this is okay. Maybe reading is better than I had originally thought. Who knows? Maybe there might be a couple more books I would like to read if I happen to need to occupy my time occasionally. Needless to say, I loved the book, which gave me a good sense I love the author too. You might think I flew through my first book. Technically, this was not my first book, but it was my first ever not assigned book that I read as a choice. It took me months to completely read through it. I was a slow reader and didn't have my whole heart into it then. From time to time, my mind wandered and I had to stop and refocus my mind back on the book that day in the courthouse. I was never picked for juror and was released from jury duty halfway through the day when they decided they were not going to try a case in court that particular date. Although my first and only ever to this day jury summons was short, it will always be a key point in my mind. It is the day I chose for the first time to read something on my own choosing. It is the day and book that put me on a path to start to fall in love with reading. About 6 months later, with a little reading here and there, I finally finished Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I actually enjoyed having a book around to read when I needed to occupy my time. Since I like Jane Austen as an author, why not start there? I still didn't love reading at this point, but I knew I liked her books. They were entertaining and easy to read. After an easy Google search, I decided on Mansfield Park for my next one. Once again, it took me a while to get through this book and the many books after it. But I continued my reading path until after a couple years, I had read all of Jane Austen's books. With each book, I grew more and more in love with reading. Since I had completed all of Jane Austen's books, I had to figure out a new author or series to read. Something that would be intriguing and would keep me engaged so I continue to read. I decided it might as well be the Harry Potter series next. Another set of movies I love. Maybe just as with Jane Austen's, if I like the movie, I might like the book. This rolled downhill into Twilight, The Hunger Games, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and the Divergent series. I fell in love with book series. I love to keep reading and reading about the characters. Just one book ties you into the characters, but once you are well into the series, you know these characters in and out. You imagine yourself in their world. What character would you be? How would you add yourself to the story? One door led to another. There is no end in books. It is just the pause between your current book and your next book. The thing about reading is once you love it, you love it. I might have started out as a fiction reader, but these days you can find me hopping back and forth between fiction and nonfiction. I love listening to an audiobook when I'm unable to read a good old-fashioned paperbound, curled up on the couch. Either way, I just like to read. When it comes to fiction books, though, I do require an HEA, happily ever after ending. I will not be satisfied unless it has an HEA. I crave to see a couple fall in love, then have their love jilted, but in the end, it all works out. Is this because I wish my life was this way? You fall in love, get married, make a family, and live happily ever after, just like all the romance books. You overcome all the bad things while you're falling in love, and then there's just bliss. The difference between a love story in a movie versus a book is one main aspect. In movies, you get to see it happen without having to picture it in your mind. In books, you get to read every detail about the scene. Since you cannot see it, the author must lay it out so you can envision it in your mind. You read the details of what each person is wearing and what they look like. The visions in your head are painted from the descriptions in the book. The suspense while you're reading the details of the scene can be palpitating. Just get me to the end of the scene so I can see what happens. The idea of waiting for the scene to play out is exciting. Pleasure is found in the anticipation. It doesn't matter what love story you like better, seeing or reading, we all want it. We all dream and wish we would fall head over heels in love and stay in love for the rest of our lives. Is that what true love is? If we are conditioned to live and love as if happily ever after is the final ending, how do we navigate the terrain when it's not actually true? When I decided to get married, I knew the good outweighed the bad parts of our relationship. We started out as fuck buddies, so you can imagine the sex was good. But the intimacy part had always been lacking since we never took our time running the bases. Never having to establish intimacy for sex made it hard to establish intimacy anywhere else in our relationship. However, the good parts of our relationship seemed to outweigh all that. I knew we were a good team when it came to problem solving together. We like a lot of the same things, such as movies, games, outdoor activities, or any activity, and we still do. I thought that this is what true love looks like. We all must give up a little something when we fall in love. The problem was, I failed to realize I did not know myself, and I did not know what type of person I wanted to be prior to getting married. Since we did not have, nor have we grown the intimate relationship between us in the last 10 years, I have never been able to find my true self within the confines of the relationship. I did not have a moment to know I don't like cooking, or a moment to learn my strengths instead of focusing on my weaknesses. I was too young to learn everything I really needed to know about myself before I committed myself to a marriage. Before I could be a good partner to my partner. Sometimes you are able to grow within your life and marriage to find the answers to your questions. But sometimes you are too confined to have the freedom to explore the answers. True love must exist, right? Somewhere out there? What does it even mean? The actual definition, per your dictionary, is a strong and lasting affection between spouses or lovers who are happy, passionate, and fulfilling relationship. Yikes. Those are words I cannot relate with. Not only happy, but passionate and fulfilling? I'm not passionate about my relationship, nor is it fulfilling. Is true love out there for me? Would I ever find out what it means and feels like if I found someone else? Maybe it doesn't even exist. That's it. It doesn't exist. How can someone be happy, passionate, and fulfilled all at the same time? All three things? I'm not sure if you can even have two of them at the same time. I'm dreaming with my head in the books and movies where things seem perfect. There is no after story to see where things fall apart. The story always ends on a high note, but doesn't show you devastations and unhappiness afterward. No, I'm not going to find someone who looks like a model and has an amazing life I want to be a part of, where we are going to run through the field together, hand in hand in love, ready to take on the world. This image is put in my head from books and TV. A good writer really knows how to pull you in. Like when you get halfway through a book and you're dying to find out if the couple gets together. Maybe that's why a book or movie must have a happy ending for me, since I don't have one. I want to live through their world. When I finish a book or movie, scenes play out in my head for days. I take those scenes and insert myself somewhere into them. I take those maybe as the heroine, maybe as a new character, but I always end happily ever after. Is it strange to you that we use the word happily instead of just happy? Happily, per Google Dictionary, means do in a happy way. It doesn't mean you are happy, just your actions are done in a happy way. Happily is a state of being. In the world we live in today, people post their lives all over social media. We choose to only post the happy pictures, which shows us living happily ever after, when behind the scenes there might be something different going on. We post only the best times or the best picture of the 50 shots we had to take to get the good one. Maybe that is it. True love is a state of being. We don't stay in that state for long. Real life takes us by the shoulders and shakes us. Marriage is just two imperfect people trying to make a life together. Their lives need to intertwine and work poetically together. If they don't intertwine correctly or perfectly, there will be trouble. Does anyone mesh perfectly? Or is it normal to not always fit together flawlessly? I feel like social media has skewed what normal might be. It is normal for love and marriage to be hard. Not all days are going to be easy, but there should be more easy days than hard. There should be more happiness than there is sadness. Instead of more happiness for me, I have what you might define as a more straightforward marriage. Day-to-day tasks can be uncomplicated and easy to do. My marriage is more straightforward to understand. It's not that there is so much sadness, just more monotony. It's not that at the end of the day, monotony can be easier to handle than being alone. The nice repetition of my monotone life has made me too scared to find out if true love does exist. Finding out would cause my life to become chaotic and lonely. I'll stay right here where I am because wanting happily ever after is a horrible excuse to leave a 10-year marriage for. All right, you guys, that is the end of my excuse number 2. True love doesn't exist. And I will see you guys next week for excuse number 3. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can get the notification when I post the next video next week, and hit that notification bell so that you are notified. I will see you guys next week on this journey as we read my book, Stronger Than Your Excuses.